It's the Aubrey Show with our special guest star, ASPD representation. Whoa, that does not flow off the tongue. Criminals arrive and try to survive and no survive. Okay, so let's clear things up. Some things up. The 21st doesn't fucking exist. I'm kidding. Okay. So you may notice that it is the 22nd. I'll have to fit in the fucking work. It is the 22nd. This is the 22nd episode. Technically, it's the episode on the 22nd. It's the 21st episode. It's the 21st episode? What did I do for some of these? That can't be right. Anyways, it's the 22nd. It's the 21st episode. But the 21st. Wait, no, wait. Because I missed. For the ease of this, I'm going to say this is the 21st episode. We're always going to be one behind, even if I skip some days. And I know what you're thinking. Why did you skip a day? It's because I was hanging out with friends. Because I have those. Now you'll notice that this implies that for the 20 days preceding that I was not hanging out with friends. And yeah, you're right. That's kind of sad when you think about it. But maybe I'll stop being alone someday, and that will make it less sad. For now, though, it is still very sad. For the time being, absolutely. Point being, yesterday I did have friends to hang out with, so don't fucking come at me for being friendless, and also don't come at me for missing my episode upload, because this one is going to count for it. Because otherwise, I'm going to have really confusing episode count. I'll count them all up at the end of the year. Why not, right? I'll count them all up, count even the missing episodes, or don't count the missing episodes. Like, I'm going to count this episode in the future. Like, when I look back on this, I'm absolutely not going to consider that I missed yesterday as a thing because that would be way too complicated and I don't like it. But my point being, at the end, I will make sure not to count that one, and we are down to 363 episodes. um, but it's okay. It is all okay. I will be okay. I'll be okay. You'll be okay. Anyways, on to the actual content of the episode. Today is one that I have been wanting to talk about since the beginning, and I was saving it for a time which I felt would be good to bring it up. And lo and behold, because here's the thing: the seven psychopaths. I'm not even going to go into it. I only had one real example that I wanted to use for this episode before, but I suddenly found myself in possession of kind of like vaguely three, really more two good ones. And one of them may not age well, we'll see. But for now, I got two good ones, so I will talk about it. And keep in mind, I will likely bring up any additional stuff in the future that pertains to this just because it is something that deeply interests me. But right now, I have three. And I will talk about them all in this episode. But what are these three things? What are they great examples of? Okay, so today, just for you, I have some decent examples of ASPD representation. And I'm going to run through the definition of that real quick, even though it's already been like 3 minutes and you're probably getting tired of intro. But, okay, maybe this will count for 2 episodes because it's going to be long as shit, probably. Because I do have to, So here's the thing. I wasn't super planning on sharing this, just in case any like employers possibly looked through my stuff and saw, this type of thing, or possibly any like, friends or partners in the future. But I don't think that this is something that I'm gonna super want to hide about myself. Like, I'm fine with being open about it. And then even if it is like a mistake in the future, I can just tell people that, maybe I'll have a funny story and a video attached to it. But let's start off with what ASPD is. ASPD is antisocial personality disorder. It's basically the spectrum of you know people who are antisocial. So I think the spectrum starts at somebody who's like a little bit antisocial. They don't too much care for strangers. They're fine with cutting people off in traffic. Um, and they keep a tight circle of friends and don't super go outside of that. That's a normal person. That's a healthy person. That's fine. And then at the very end of that spectrum is psychopaths. So it kind of ranges from that. And, it covers really the back half of that. I guess, okay, anything beyond 20% could probably be classified as antisocial personality disorder. It's having it. It does not currently have a cure, so to speak. It can be dealt with through therapy and, like lessons on stuff like empathy, which they can often struggle with. Um, and, like anger management classes, um, and just general self awareness. But it cannot be completely cured. Um, and there's not the most known about it. It's kind of like autism in the way that it's just something that those people have to live with, and it will, likely alienate them a bit from other people. Um, and I personally um, have not, as far as I can tell, felt emotional empathy in my life. Um, a couple of other things, I've had anger issues in the past, but I've gotten, kind of a handle on them. Um, point being, I personally, I'm showing symptoms of resting at about, so say 60% on um, this spectrum. I am currently below 18, so I'm not diagnosed, of course, and there's no real point in getting diagnosed with it. It's just going to put some. It's not something curable, So, definitely tell your therapist about any symptoms that you might be struggling with, but there's no real reason to get the actual thing diagnosed. Just work through the symptoms and work the best you can around it with it. Sorry, I got talking a bit to the direct audience, but basically the point of um, this is a real mental disorder that people are affected by. It used to be called sociopathy and psychopathy. Now it's this. Um, and um, the the representation for people like this has so far been utter shit. And everybody knows that. The psychopath villain is a very popular trait. The sociopath ex-boyfriend is a very popular thing. These are descriptors that we use in our everyday life. Um, I've definitely heard people around me very commonly. It's very a lot of times people will say things like, you're not a sociopath. Um, just to add some sort of weight to a statement. They are, they aren't. It's honestly a very misused medical term that is no longer a medical term, probably because of misuse. Um, because if you labeled people these types of things, it would put a target on their head. It's just better to use ASPD nowadays. But the point being, the representation for these illnesses in media, due to their representation in culture being vilified, is very bad. But today, I want to talk about some things that don't do that, some things that are great examples of it. So yeah, I wanted to show those. Sorry, yeah, that dragged on a bit, but um, I would like to start with kind of the worst, and yeah, I'm moving in backwards chronological order from the most recent to the least. When I really started to see good representation of these. characters. Um, and the most recent was tonight. Um, when I watched Mr. Right with my family. I did not go into it expecting to see any um, representation at all, actually. Um, so, it was definitely a bit of a shocking experience um, to see that, but it wasn't portrayed the worst, you know. So, Mr. Right is it's a 2015 movie featuring Sam Rockwell, which is a legend and actually is in a later film that I will be talking about. Um, and the idea is that there's this girl, and I'm gonna have this open with the so she breaks up with her boyfriend. She hates him, whatever, as it goes. She looks like a 14-year-old girl the entire time. Apparently, that's just how Anna Kendrick is. Um, yeah, what a young face. That's impressive. Um, but you know, she's a girl. She just broke up with her boyfriend. She meets a guy. He's like funny, and she doesn't know that he is a hitman. Um, and that's a cool concept. It's classic rom com. They get together in the end and everything. It's very cute. Um, but when this movie started out, it did feature a scene where you know, the main guy, Sam Rockwell, um, kills a dude, um, or kills a woman after putting on a clown nose. Um, very obviously feels no remorse for it. Goes on to like dance around and then have a fun little action sequence where he kills a bunch of people coming after him. Um, and he's very happy throughout this entire thing. He does exhibit like annoyance at his like surroundings being destroyed by these gunmen, and a little bit of disappointment, stuff like that. um I don't super remember if he felt anger. I might want to look that up. That could be interesting. um at the woman, because the woman did hire him to kill her like cheating husband, and that's why he killed her. But there's possibility that it was there. And yeah, he's obviously dealing with his grade. um And I wrote that away to rom-com magic. It's like, of course, he doesn't give a shit because he's a rom-com character. Um, he doesn't need to have any specific sort of mental things. But as the movie progressed, I started to notice that he was showing very particular symptoms, and you know, these were stuff like, um, you know, he was he was he was killing people, but he didn't feel anything towards it. Um, you know, he put greater value on um, he put greater value on one specific like person, um, as opposed to anybody else in the entire world. It seemed, um, and um, he kind of like he acted eccentrically, which set him apart from everybody else. He was very suave and stuff like that. And all of these kind of like they struck me a little bit, just the way that he acted. He didn't seem exactly neurotypical coded, you know so I was unsure. And it turned out, in the middle of the movie, it was said that um, he's acting this way because he got hit on the head with a rock when a building was falling on him, because he's a hitman. That's what hitmen do. Um, and he went from being a stone cold killer to a to a, the person that he is today, a dude who kills people who hire him to kill people. He's got this moral code, and he's started, like feeling things. That makes him a bad hitman, because he's feeling things now. You can't kill everybody. Um, so I'm actually going to tackle this. So first of all, I have no clue if Francis or Mr. Wright is supposed to be ASPD coded. If he has ASPD, what's up with that? If he had it before the rock hit him, or if he had it after the rock hit him, what the fuck happened with that? But seeing from where he is half and half decent representation. First of all, um, any good ASPD representation, you know, like a lot of it would. Um, point is, more ASPD heroes in social media. I mean, in just in actual media like movies and TV shows, would be a fucking blessing. So, having a good guy who could possibly be exhibiting traits of this in anything is huge. A representation bonus. It really helps a lot for people who have that. Helps me a lot to see that kind of stuff, go well for the main characters. Even with, including struggles, which this movie doesn't super do in the way of that. This movie does not tackle this the best, and that's because I don't super think it was meant to tackle it. It had some weird moments where it was like, holy shit, that's really genuinely cool. You know, it could be seen as, you know, a, a, a really good representation of how a person with this mental disorder might be able to fall in love with somebody else. And, that's through finding somebody else who is, you know, still able to do the same type of things. I don't know. This movie was ridiculous, and through that, it's kind of hard to see that. But it's still nice to see, people with possibly this mental disorder falling in love and having a strong moral code, which is always nice. Um, and what was it? Point being, it was okay. It's doable. It might be worth watching for anybody else. I don't know. um, I completely lost track of what I was thinking. But yeah, I'd half recommend. It's not a big thing. But the next one is a lot better. Okay, so DC fans are gonna shit themselves when they hear this. But I don't know if you've seen Peacemaker. It's very, very new, especially the episode that I'm talking about. So if you haven't seen episode 4, Peacemaker, but you are watching the show, watch it right now. Watch up to episode 4. Um, if you aren't planning on watching the show, feel free to watch on. Basically just at your discretion. I will be spoiling all up to episode 4. Um, because holy crap, did this both come out of nowhere and come out of like the worst place. But okay, so when I saw trailers for this, I was really excited to see this vigilante character. I had never followed him in the comics, but I looked him up. Apparently, he had like an arc. Like, he was trying to be Batman, but then he killed somebody, and they started killing more people, and he became like, like Batman, but he kills people. It's very edgy. um, so, but before I even knew any of that, I was excited to see this guy on screen because he looked hilarious. He looked like he was going to be a great time. Um, and in the first episode, you see a bit of obsessiveness coming from him. I was like, that's interesting. That wasn't explicitly stated in the trailer, but I can get behind that. That seems pretty cool. So I didn't know too much about him, and I will say that obsessiveness at first turned me off from his character a teensy bit, but he was funny, so there's that. Um, but in the second episode, there was actually also not much, honestly. Or was that? I don't know. Point is, in episodes 2 and 3, he started to, come into the show as a character. And you see him interact with Peacemaker, the main character, in very telling ways. So to start off, Peacemaker is a um, is a dude who I can't quite put a finger on um, mentally. I think it's genuinely possible that he's just an adult man. Like he is willing to do terrible things, which is very, immediately you would want to say that he's pretty high on the spectrum. But it's not necessarily like because of how he goes about it and because of what's shown in the show, it seems like it's more of like a trauma-based thing and not necessarily a mental disorder that was with him from birth, like genetically, or it could have been beaten into him, but I doubt it. I think he definitely does have inlaid trauma, but I don't think that it's necessarily the disorder that I'm you know looking for specifically. So he does not entirely demonstrate it. Who does is this vigilante character that I was talking about. And in the second and third episode, he really starts to demonstrate this. And I'm antsy about accepting it, He seems like a character that's going to be mainly played for jokes, and while it's better than having that as like a villain, if they still only do villainous things for like jokes, it's not the best thing in the world. It's nice to see any form of representation that's not entirely negative. Um, but there can definitely still be, it can still be a little bit disappointing. So in two and three, he is a character, that comes in, plays off of Peacemaker, is largely for jokes. And the idea is that he is obsessed with this guy and he wants to be bestest friends with him. And, his advances are not necessarily responded to. Um, but he tries his best, he sets up exactly what he knows that he would like in an attempt to win over Peacemaker by, making him have fun. Um, and, by doing all the things that Peacemaker used to kind of, do for fun with him. And he can't seem to entirely catch on to Peacemaker's emotional state. Um, that's wild, So what you're seeing there is you're seeing he can't seem to catch on to his emotional state. That is a lack of emotional empathy. It's very clear in the show. He does not seem to get it. It is entirely played off for laughs, but if there's other symptoms, it's possible that it could be hinting at something. Um, Two, um, you'll notice that the ways he tries to cheer him up are things that do not necessarily make Peacemaker happy. It's assumed that they did in the past, like prostitutes, and shooting things and everything. Um, and he seems to be playing off of things that they have done that have made Peacemaker relatively happy in the past, even though Peacemaker views him as annoying and an infant. But these things that he's doing are both, not based on his current state, which again implies a lack of empathy, and also they seem to be largely based on what Vigilante finds fun. He really likes destroying things for the sake of destroying things. That's kind of his whole thing. It's what differentiates him from Peacemaker. Peacemaker has a heavy emotional attachment to, his job. He does it all for peace. That's his whole thing. Vigilante does it for justice, but I'll move on to that in section 3. So he just does things that he would enjoy with Peacemaker in an attempt to cheer him up, which is very, very obvious, type of lack of mental awareness or empathy that it can be very difficult for people with ASPD to cultivate. 3, he has a very important conversation with Peacemaker in that he's attempting to give him a pep talk, does terribly because of the aforementioned lack of empathy and emotional awareness. Um, and in this pep talk, he goes, he has like a sentence or two where he talks about how, you know, do you think that I enjoy? Because he's like, this is your duty. This is your duty. You gotta do this. Do you think that I enjoy, and he lists out a very gruesome way to kill somebody. I don't quite remember it. I think it involves squeezing their eyeballs or something. And then he goes, because I do. Because he, enjoys his job. And that was hilarious for one thing, and definitely played for laughs. Um, but it does show that not only does he have, no emotional attachment to this type of thing, he just really deeply enjoys the act of causing harm, which is a very, I mean, I hate to say it, but it is definitely a very, you know, a very it's typical trait. Um, but he, um, he also has the, sorry, I'm super distracted. He also has the, fuck, where is it going? Oh, I don't know. He has like an enjoyment for it. He considers it an art form. Um, and that is innately like I'd imagine anger fueled, which would be very ASPD. And if not, it's possible that he just does like view it as like an art form type of thing, which could be as kind of obsessive traits, which are also a symptom. Um, but I think that it's much more likely that it lines up in like an anger way. This is how he um, bring brings out those emotions, and that is actually a big part of ASPD, is that it is it usually, in the more extreme versions, it does result in a dampening of a lot of emotions, sans anger. So getting that out in the way that vigilante does is entirely possible. Um, and um, I see all that, and I'm actually going to cut now. So I see all that, and immediately I'm tempted to take it as really good representation, but I'm wary because it's all played for laughs. Um, yeah, but it doesn't necessarily seem like it's entirely character trait. It seems mostly like it's just, wouldn't it be funny if this character, acted like this and really enjoyed killing people? So yeah. And kind of in the third episode, a vaguely, like he kills people when Peacemaker can't. He does seem to, he exhibits traits of enjoyment that could be played off for jokes, but that did seem much more like a character moment than the rest of it. So that one did kind of get close, but I was very wary because I was expecting, for the entire show for that to just be entirely, laughable, and for him to not really show any symptoms other than overwhelming, like, violence and stuff like that. Um, that all changed in episode 4. So, this is the most recent episode, and it has a lot of vigilante in it. Um, he, it starts off with him and Peacemaker kind of like, talking about stuff. Um, you know, he's annoyed with Peacemaker because Peacemaker let him get his toe cut off. Um, you know, that's kind of the there's definitely a bit of narcissistic tendencies when it comes to the body with ASPD. But come on, anybody would be pissed about their toe being half cut off. So I'm not going to look too far into that. Point is, he's pissed with his friend, and he acts in a very telling way. I can't quite remember it off the top of my head, and I'm not willing to look over the entire thing right now and re-examine it. Although I will watch the episode again probably anyways, so who cares? Um, but he acts in a way entirely dissimilar to my own. uh, he's just a little bit bitchy about it, and he snaps. He snaps, which is very interesting. His best friend so far, and you fully expect him. At least I fully expected him because it would be the funny thing. Oh yeah, you can cut off my toe anytime you want, man, because he's like the best friend character. But he snaps. He's done putting up with that. He starts out with passive aggressiveness, then he moves on to full aggressiveness with his thing because he is pissed off. And that, that's also another human reaction. That's just really great writing, uh, but it could definitely be seen as, ASPD type of snapping. But I'm not going to go super far into that because that's just how a human would work, you know? um, but what's important, what's definitely pinnable to that, is that later in the episode, um, you know, he kisses and makes up with Peacemaker because, of course, he does. And while this could just be like a show choice to make it so that the character dynamic can continue, I will say is much more of an ASPD trait than a neurotypical trait. If we are able to take it as such, being able to quickly forgive, you're my best friend again, just because you said so, you know, um, rolling with that, he wasn't going to ever give up Peacemaker if he did actually have this kind of weird codependency that, 60 to 80% ASPD can create. Um, and it's kind of cool to see that being represented. Not a huge thing though. But as the episode continues, he does things for Peacemaker. He drives him to a place. He just wants to see him happy, which is very heartwarming to see. Um, but it's not entirely shown until later, which I'll tell you about. But while Peacemaker is in prison talking to his dad, um, Vigilante talks to the woman. The I don't entirely remember her name. Um, but basically, she, her whole thing is that she can't really kill people. They're definitely foreshadowing something with her. Um, but she can't really kill people. But she talks to Vigilante, and she's like, "God damn, I just wish, you know, I just wish Peacemaker's dad could go away." This is obvious manipulation, and I would like to say this was great to me because that is something that would only either work inside the confines of a show or in real life against somebody with a some kind of mental disorder that would affect their thinking. Because what happens is that he hears that. He visibly thinks. Visible thinking. It's a show standard. Like it's a very cinematic thing, so it could be attributed to that, but it is something that I do. So I relate to it. He visibly thinks and immediately in the quickest way possible. The second that he hears that his friend would be better off if this person, was dealt with, and he's the person who knows that he's able to deal with people, he gets into prison in the quickest way possible, which is hilariously, it's how, dude, it's insane to watch because he is genuinely exhibiting such explicit traits of this with how he thinks. He thought entirely logically, how is the fastest way to get into this prison for an offense that isn't going to, immediately get me shot? He did it. He gets immediately put away. Um, he goes into like, the holding area and he attempts to piss off Peacemaker's dad so that he can kill him out of self-defense. And this is insane because not only is this fucking insane writing for the record, but it's such a wonderful exhibition of traits. You know, it's that same entirely logical thinking, kind of empathyless um, type of, what's the most efficient way that I can do this, driven entirely by care, by a human fucking emotion. Um, and oh my God, because I write a character named Pathos, and this is exactly how he would act. And I'm thinking about that. I mean, it's not the exact same, but it's delightfully similar. And he has ASPD, and I know how to write it. So seeing that is fucking insane to me because that's exactly how I would have done that. And later in the episode, so he fails to do that because Peacemaker's dad is too smart to get provoked and allow him to, self-defense kill him. So Vigilante gives up for the time being. He's like, I can do it later, but then he's taken out of prison, so he can't do it later. Because he couldn't just kill him outright, because he knows that would be a bad idea, because he understands the legal system, but not necessarily the emotions of the people around him, which is insane to see. Um, um, but he gets picked up, and he has this wonderful conversation with the woman who manipulated him into almost killing a dude just because he thought that it would be right. And you know, he says, I couldn't do it. And seeing that was so, I know that it spoke to so many people on such a good level because, um, it speaks to that natural human need to want to help. And seeing that portrayed in a character that has ASPD, and I hope that it's fucking officially announced because that would literally help me so much. Oh my God. But having that emotional moment is insanely good representation. Seeing that, it makes anybody in the audience with it feel validated. He was genuinely a good guy, and it makes people without it think he was genuinely a good guy, and maybe start to question their own views of people who think this type of way. It's so insane because he's driven by everything that I ever wanted an ASPD written character to be driven by, which is best friends. Because in full honesty, that's kind of what I'm driven by and what I'm trying to do. I'm definitely on a less extreme level than him. But I'm not going to continue saying anything. Jesus, it's fucking insane. I'm gonna move on to the last bit. This is going on for way too long, by the way. It's like a 50-minute thing. But the last bit. Actually, no. Okay, so here's the thing. I have one more. The oldest bit of ASPD representation that I know of, and you know, the my favorite film ever, Seven Psychopaths. But I'm gonna have to save that for a future thing because this is taking way too long, and I feel like I can talk a lot about that. It's a free episode. Watch it if you think you have, um, ASPD or something of the sort. Definitely watch it. Maybe after you watch Peacemaker up to episode 4. Um, so you can, get that feeling that it gives you. Um, I mean, yeah. But what was I saying? Point is, I'm not going to do that today. I will promise to do it in the future because it is my favorite movie ever. Largely for the reason of ASPD representation, but also for a couple of other reasons. So I'll talk about it. But that was today's episode. Um, I'm sorry because this was definitely a very useless episode to a lot of people, but I urge you. Okay, homework, homework, homework. Your homework, if you're a writer, is to write a short story, a very short story, in which a person has ASPD, but um, is not necessarily entirely detestable, because you do not see enough stories like that nowadays. Uh, and if you are not a writer, if you are any other person, um, just take a bit after this video. Your homework is to take a bit after this video, and um, I don't know. No, your homework is to not immediately pigeonhole people with ASPD into any sort of stereotype, because they definitely have. I'm not gonna say we because that would be cringy. They definitely have their own thoughts and feelings, however dampened they might be. And they're trying to their best to go around to have to make it in this world. the same way that you are. But yeah, I got way too fucking preachy. Thank you for coming to the Aubrey show. I'm sorry for missing yesterday, but hopefully this one makes up for it, and I will see you next time. Look alive, criminals arrive and try to survive and no surviving. It's soup in the middle of a game of chess, bitch. Talk about. Goddamn.